still trying to make a run for the top 16. Maverick, not quite as well set up, but we are going to get into another match. It is looking like MRyagut on the right up against Icicles. That's not a name that I'm too familiar with, Admirable.
I think I've run into Icicles once or twice on ladder. I don't quite remember the games that were going on, but MRyagut has been having quite a performance for himself here at DreamHack. So Icicles, matching that performance as well. This is a big one for these two. I believe they're still in contention for a top 16 cut.
Yep.
But they're going to have to likely win out their rounds from that stage if that's going to happen. Pavel moving up to X and 2 now, where X is the number of rounds minus the number of losses here. So, at 2 losses, there's still some hope for him, but he has to win his next round if he's going to make it there. But I am really curious to see if there's one strategy that's been mostly dominant. I've seen Taunt Warrior in so many lineups at this point. I've been seeing some of the aggressive decks tend to fail a little bit.
Yeah.
And again, that's that refinement process. When you're so early on in the metagame, it's going to take time to cut the right cards and put in the right answers for particular situations. But Icicles looking really focused here.
Yes, hyper-focused. And when you're going up against a competitor as storied as MRyagut, I can't blame him. You need to bring your Hearthstone A game right here if you want to keep yourself in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Yagut's a really nice and playful attitude, but when it comes to competition, this guy's pretty
He's all
fierce.
business.
Him alongside Crane and Super JJ, they took down Trinity Series, and that was an incredibly tough field that they had to beat at that tournament. But MRyagut played a pivotal role in that tournament. There was a week that Super JJ couldn't make it there, and it was Crane and MRyagut having to work together. And they were on point. They had the right game plans, and everything fell into place for them. So we're moving into game, and it is a Mage Mirror, but I'm curious how some of these cards are created, if that's a natural Kabbalist Tome or something maybe from a Babbling Book. What we see Medivh on Icicle sides, and that's a card where this build is, I believe Sottle wanted to call it Discover Mage, where you're just having effects that create other powerful things, and Medivh very much fits in that game plan. If you're able to stick that to the board and then start casting high-value spells, you'll get high-value minions to boot, and that is oftentimes a snowballing effect that your opponent can't fend off.
Well, snowballing indeed for Icicles. And MRyagut has more resources, but he's under quite a bit of pressure here. Flame Strike can cut down this board really nicely, though. And I believe Icicles also has an Ice Block up and active right now. So both of these guys have a little bit of security to fall back on.
Yeah, Flame Strike definitely driving some value here, but now MRyagut's going to face down some trouble here. Medivh is very powerful moving into this stage of the game. The ATS is just threatened so much against Mage. All of their removal is seated in damage that's fairly efficient for cost or big board sweeps. If Icicles is able to generate a 10 cost minion from the ATS, oftentimes that'll leave Yagut in a position where he can either have to use multiple resources or he's going to have to eat some big damage to have the time to kill that minion. That can be a tough one to deal with, and I think is likely to give Icicles an edge if he just drops that down here.
Well, he was looking at alternative lines, but Medivh is the strongest play to the board this turn. And you can actually set up a 1 damage block pop with the Pyroblast next turn if you guys are this turn. So that was a really nice forethought from Icicles. Oh, the Librarian will net him a card too.
It's about one of the best 2-cost minions he can net.
That's
off of
pretty
that
good.
The drawback completely gone of discarding the card, but the Death Rattle.
Still active.
Oh, so nice.
Oh, so nice. And like you said, Yagut is faced with some difficulty here.
Well, I would like to know what's dead this game and see if Onyx Bishop is a relevant pick, but we've jumped into this one fairly late into the game, so it's tough to really evaluate where MRyagut's thinking would be.
I doubt he has no duplicates left in deck, so Inkmaster would likely not be active. I mean, maybe Voidwalker is just a very tiny wall.
Yeah, if you look at, the one thing I'm looking at is the Voidwalker, because MRyagut's hand is stuffed with a lot of high mana cards at this point, and he's under a lot of pressure, so he just needs to find a way to simply access all of the cards that are in his hand. And I think in that case, Voidwalker might be able to buy you a big attack from a minion or something.
Yeah.
And but Inkmaster's active.
He doesn't have any duplicates left. Well, and essentially Icicles was playing with at least one card in his hand face up with the Flame Geyser face last turn. You knew to expect Pyroblast for hopefully a 1 damage pop, but White Eyes is going to prevent it, Nathan.
Yeah, that being in the way, you know, getting a taunt off the Firelands portal here is incredibly fortunate for MrYagut. It could have very easily just been any 5-cost minion without taunt. And instead, Icicles not popping that block means that MrYagut can land a defensive Alexstrasza. It means he could have time to use Kabbalist Tome and try to find some very valuable cards that can put him ahead in this matchup. That's a big turn.
That's a big drop. We've seen some pretty crazy Firelands portals yesterday and today. Reynad got a Doom Guard off of his, and he had Medivh active as well, so he picked up Archmage Antonidas to boot. It's been a good weekend for Firelands portal.
And Atiesh.
And Atiesh.
Yeah.
Medivh just happy to get invited to the party.
Very powerful mage.
He is. And it makes sense. Icicles is playing as Medivh. He's playing Medivh to boot. MrYagut, good old Jaina, but you know, not quite as much flair.
So Icicle's going to have to take a little bit more time to get this job done. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Icicles didn't use a hero power on this turn, so that way he could pop, but in terms of hero powering the face, that is.
Yes, yeah.
You know, he wants that Pyroblast to deliver MrYagut to 1, but if MrYagut can have a safe board position and land that Alexstrasza as his block's not getting popped, that's super vital. But now that his taunt is gone, it doesn't look like he actually has a way to stop the additional damage unless he wants to Frostbolt face to keep Atiesh from attacking, but that's not possible with 1 charge left. Pyroblast would consume that charge, so I think this is largely a value battle where MrYagut...
Well, you can attack... Oh, no, because if you attack with Atiesh first, then you pop him at 10.
So MrYagut is largely in a kind of a weird tempo battle here where he needs to get something online so he doesn't suffer too much damage when he plays Alexstrasza to heal himself back up. And that's a tall order at the moment. He doesn't really have a strong way to do that. You know, Mirror Entity might actually be a solution to that problem, but then he doesn't have mana to actually Meteor.
Yeah, his interactions are a bit strange.
Oh,
whatever he gets off of Glyph is going to be discounted by 2.
Oh, you're right. So Mirror Entity actually might be a solution here in that case. Because if you Meteor the minions that Icicles has in play and then set up your own Mirror Entity, that will oftentimes answer your opponent's minion as your block's getting popped, and then you get to play Alexstrasza defensively.
Works as a removal spell almost.
Yeah, that's really clever.
He's not going to have the mana for the entity this turn, though.
But his block's not getting popped this turn.
Yeah.
Now. He's cleared the board off, so this is actually looking like suddenly a strong position for MrYagut.
Well, no, you don't quite have the reach, even with Portal, Frostbolt.
A big one is what that Pyroblast and Atiesh would produce in a situation like that. You know, is Icicles willing to take that risk right away? And, you know, he could simply fight for board pressure.
10 mana minions are generally pretty good. You have both Deathwings, Yasharaj.
There's some bad ones in there too.
Giants, N'Zoth, Cthulhu. Those are pretty underwhelming for 10.
Yep. I'm thinking Firelands Portal. That's going to be the big one here.
Crime Street Enforcer, normally a good 5-drop. And Stone Sentinel, normally good for 7, but here both of these are pretty dang bad.
Yeah, he does still win the board, though, and I think that's really the most important factor here, is that Icicles is pressuring MrYagut at every step of the way so that he has to answer what's happening. Flame Guys are providing some value, thanks to
sweet little buff Flame Elemental. Gonna get in there and do some damage.
It's like a zombie chow.
It's like a zombie chow.
Doesn't even heal.
Oh my goodness. Gonna go out and build Elemental Grime Street Hand Buff Paladin.
I don't think you're gonna do that.
Just because I won't have success with it doesn't mean I'm not gonna do it.
The Gluttonous Ooze shows up after Atiesh is fully expended.
Oh man. That's a bit of a bummer for MrYagut.
Well, what else is a big bummer is he just doesn't have a way to kill this board. That's a problem.
That's a big one.
It's a big problem.
Icicles can pop Yagut at 1.
Fighting for board value was the key to this game for Icicles. If he had simply gone for pressure on MrYagut's life total, it would not have worked. It was him getting that just minions on board to fight for that repetitive damage was a major impact.
If you pop the block with minions, then you still have those burn spells behind you to be able to pop the block again or deal through the 15 damage Alexstrasza heal. It just gives you more flexibility.
Did MrYagut miss the extra secret activation here? Because that 5/5 gets discounted for each secret
Yeah.
he played. So he could have weaved in an extra hero power here, I believe.
Did he Entity after the Crystal Runner?
He did.
Okay, yes. If he'd played Entity, he would have had 2 more mana, could have dropped down the Ooze or a hero power.
Now, Icicles does have to navigate what this random secret is. And he's just going to go for it right away, and he finds great news.
Yes, he does.
Block is popped. You can stop some of the pressure on board.
Barrier first, check for Counterspell.
That's right. Now, Spellbender is the last remaining thing that secret could be to actually interact with spells and the board.
I mean, it could also be Potion of Polymorph, but I don't think you're worried about that.
Entity is looking mighty fine right now.
Yes, it is.
I think Yagut's in checkmate right at the moment. If he plays Alexstrasza, he gives Icicles an 8/8 to fight with.
I mean, he does have second block, so he can drag this out for another turn.
That's a Totem Flame Elemental now.
If you block and clear board, then you Alexstrasza afterwards, Icicles is down to only Pyroblast for burn.
Yeah, and I think that's what Yagut has to do in order to succeed in this spot, is he has to find a way to land Alexstrasza in a safe position.
So yeah, block this turn. You have to get this board cleared. But then if you Alex next turn, Icicles needs to find some more damage. And it would have to be over 2 turns.
That's a natural Tar Creeper.
Yeah.
Wow.
Think there may be some elemental synergy in here?
I don't know. I think maybe just playing Tar Creeper because it's good.
Just good against aggro.
Yeah. You know, TJ and I were talking about this yesterday. A lot of times, what the Mage deck struggles with is having a significant turn 5 and turn 6. You play a secret and you hero power off.
Yeah.
You don't always need to play your secret that early. And so in this spot, Tar Creeper can give you a way to simply have a defensive play to get to your later stages. I think this is actually a cool choice.
That makes a lot of sense.
There's Mirror Entity. And so now Mr. Yagut is treading a thin line here.
Ooh. I mean, just look at the resources, though. He's got a Kabbalah Stone. That's going to be 3 spells. Potentially could be Barrier or Block picked up on top of the... It needs to be Alexstrasza heal this turn, but...
Yeah, the problem is that 3/4.
Yeah. It's a scrappy little flame elemental.
Yeah, and mind you that Icicles still has Ice Block up.
Yeah.
In addition to this. So the pressure is a long way off from Mr. Yagut, who has to heal himself this turn. And that's a Pyroblast in Icicle's hand. So if Mr. Yagut's going to get out of this situation, it is almost certainly going to involve some more defensive tools from Kabbalah's Tome. If he can infinitely chain Kabbalah's Tomes into more Kabbalah's Tomes and Ice Blocks, that's looking like his hope to win the game. And that's...
It's possible.
It's pretty close to impossible, though.
But it's possible.
So you're saying there's a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance, Nathan.
It's do or die. No help.
Do or dead.
He's not dead this turn, though. He is at 2.
Yeah.
So he does have 1 extra turn here. But again, what's going to produce healing at this point?
Babbling Book. Into Kabbalah's Tome.
Well,
He's dead.
A good old Frostbolt will do
Coming
it.
in clutch.
But Icicle's even going to be able to check for some other stuff in the process. Because
Wisely putting him to 1, playing around block.
that's going to do it. Icicles takes game number 1 in this set. And it was just the pressure that rolled out in this one. It's such a big deal in so many matchups, is to find the step of the way where you get pressure. And it changes from game to game in every single deck. And in this one, it was just simply the Medivh value, hitting an extra minion from Fireland's Portal. Everything came together at the end of the stage there for Icicles.
It's really nice to see that Medivh is finally finding some play in these decks. The meta has slowed down pretty significantly since Journey to Angoro came out. You're not constantly being bullied by Aggro Shaman and by Pirate Warrior exclusively, so you can get away with putting some of these greedier value cards in your deck and try to win out in the control mirrors.
Yeah, now you're just getting bullied by Aggro Druid and Paladin
and Rogue and
a little bit
still Warrior.
They're all good. They're all still very good.
But it's not Totem Golem. It's just what I tell myself at night to be able to sleep easy.
At least it's not Totem Golem.
At least it's not Totem Golem.
So Yagut now on deck to find his most effective deck versus what Icicles has on board. And this game 1 is such a big advantage to the winner here. And last year standing, you just stay on your deck when you win the game. And so if MryaGut simply goes into a counter, and then Icicles has a counter, and so on and so forth, he ends up winning the game. And there, Blaze Caller, right in hand. So natural Flame Geyser, natural Blaze Caller. He does have heavy elemental synergy in this deck.
That's pretty cool. I like that. It's an elemental burn mage variant, but it still has a lot of staying power in the late game. You're still playing blocks. You're still likely playing some sort of freeze effect. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the deck shell is certainly there. You know, Arcanologist, Secrets, Arcane Intellect, that sort of stuff is...
They're just too strong to cut out of any mage build right now.
They're just very core cards to the way it operates. And, you know, having your burn package of Frostbolts and Fireballs, they're just cheap, efficient answers to a lot of threats. So his attack plan instead is just he wanted more Firelands Portal style of effects. And a strong way to do that is with Blaze Caller.
7 mana, 6/6, 5 damage, and Firefly is just a good 1-drop against aggro anyway, so if you're running those elementals, maybe you fit in Tark Reapers, and then, well, you might as well have a little bit of extra burst at the end.
Yeah, but MryaGut on Jade Druid, this is certainly a deck that has historically given Mage a lot of trouble. It has a lot of scaling potential with just a lot of Jade cards, and it does a great job at actually drawing extra cards. The one thing it really suffers to is a lot of early pressure, and that's something that Icicles just doesn't have in this game. So MryaGut's going to be free to continue to ramp up his mana turn after turn with those pair of Jade Blossoms, refill his hand with Nourish, and then start getting big Jades online. If he's ever under pressure, the Earth and Scales gives a minion +1/+1, and then you gain armor equal to its attack.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of scaling potential, how about Earth and Scales? And you're likely running Fail Rage as well, so the health total for Druid is deceptively high.
Yeah, he's got a lot of ways to generate value and then to keep himself protected if he's not under overwhelming pressure. And the fact that Icicles is really lacking that in this game, I think is paramount to MryaGut's success. He needs to find himself free to use his cards that don't typically have immediate board impact.
Well, Yagut has had almost an ideal start up until this point. Icicle's hand hasn't been bad, but like you were saying, he just needs that pressure, which the elemental build of Mage still certainly has. You've got Mana Worm, you've got Sorcerer's Apprentice, maybe?
We did see Sorcerer's Apprentice from that side. Well, that was from Yagut's side, actually.
Yeah.
He played Sorcerer's Apprentice.
And it was Entitied over on Icicle's side. And the point being, there's stuff that you can play in the 1/2 slot. Arcanologist, of course, as we see. But just not appearing in hand for Icicles this game.
It looks like we have...
some technical difficulty, maybe? Yagut not looking happy.
Icicle still plays through his turn, so we'll get this loaded back up, and hopefully we can continue here.
Man, you would not want to give up this game if you're Yagut. This was such an ideal start.
Yeah, I think everything's looking like it's fine. We're reconnecting the hand. We'll get that up as quickly as possible for Icicles. We apologize for that technical difficulty there.
There we go. All good.
Looks like a Fangel to me.
Yeah. If you can get Nourish off on the next turn, you are in such a secure position.
Yeah, Fangel is really the one board objective that Druid can create for the opponent. This is like a you need to answer me now style of card. In my mind, it's really just more of a form of disruption for your opponent. They have to commit resources to it typically. If Icicles lets this go, he's in a lot of trouble suddenly. But if he doesn't let it go, MryaGut does still have some benefit from it. He had to expend resources to get it done, and he wasn't necessarily doing what he wanted to do on that turn. And so that's going to help him lead into the rest of his cards and really start to find that endgame potential that he needs to win this game.
It continues to prevent development from Icicles, meaning that Yagut gets a clear Nourish either way, which is really, really important here because he's going to need those extra cards. He needs to Nourish at some point, and if you Nourish when your opponent has a board, you're just at too much risk to take too much damage.
Right, so in this instance, this actually worked out really well for Icicles. He didn't have too much to do anyway. So he's fairly happy to just expend and clear off the Fangel and not have to worry about it. But it's got to be worrisome that he is not firmly taking the board in this game. You know, enough time, MryaGut, he's going to overwhelm what Icicles has.
Yeah, Icicles is the aggressor in this matchup. Yagut needs to take time to ramp and build up his Jade Golem size, but Icicles hasn't been able to take advantage of the slow nature of Yagut's start. and unfortunately has had a slow start of his own.
The other problem here is that MrYagut's draws are just really underwhelming. Auctioneer is looking like it's a great pickup for him at this point, but he's only got 2 Jade cards left, and the 2 Earthen Scales are not doing a lot of weightlifting in this matchup unless he's just in kind of a tricky spot where he's racing against Burn. So
they very well might, but it's going to take a lot of time to build up to that point.
And Icicles, he's getting close to that turn with Blaze Caller, with Medivh, and then start to crank out threats afterwards. So MrYagut needs to have this time to start pushing minions onto the board. But this turn, fairly dead for Icicles as well.
Yagut needs to start finding pressure in response. That's not it. The Behemoth slots nicely into this turn, but I mean, looking ahead, he's got so many reactive cards and he hasn't had to react to anything this game.
Yeah, to me, again, just the big thing is he's got 2 real threats to work with after this. It's a Jade Behemoth and then the Jade Blossom afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think that MrYagut's draw density is better than Icicles at the moment. You know, Icicles got
Mana Worms.
Potentially Mana Worms. We haven't seen a Mana Worm yet. But
we did see one on board
he has like Flame
in the first game.
Arcanologist, more secrets.
Yeah.
Like, I think the number of dead draws that Icicle has at this point
is
far
higher.
outweighs what MrYagut has. MrYagut's time, I feel, makes more progress.
Yeah. The draws that Yagut has are advancing his game plan, whereas Icicle's draws just don't respond well to Yagut's game plan.
And that could be a really key pickup for MrYagut.
That's really good.
Atiesh is like one of the big payoff cards that Icicle has against this Druid deck from MrYagut. So the fact that he's got an answer for it right away, that is a big swing that happens. Sure, Icicle still gets a 7/7 out of it,
Yeah.
but
That's not why you play Medivh.
it's the value that he's looking for in that instance.
It's just a more expensive summoning stone.
And MrYagut actually going to Earthen Scales this twice. His goal is to get this out of range of Firelands Portal and a Flame Strike in this turn.
That's wise. He's playing with the resources he has.
It also gets him out of Blaze Caller range as well.
That's a good point too.
That can take away Icicle's turn here with Blaze Caller fairly often.
You can still Blaze Caller, kill the smaller Jade, and challenge the 6/6 with just the body of Blaze Caller. But do you really want to do that? The next Jade that comes out will be a 5/5. Blaze Caller kills that outright.
That's the problem to look for. The issue I'm seeing is if he doesn't play Blaze Caller now, when is it actually going to fit in?
I mean, you can Steam Surger and Flame Geyser the 3/2. Steam Surger ideally
Vulnerable Swipe, vulnerable
hits in
Barrel
with
Rage.
Yeah, but I mean, ideally you hit in and then just hero power off the what would be a 6/1 golem at that point. It's risky.
I think I'm going for the Blaze Caller.
And also just YOLO Glyph.
You know, maybe he throws a Frostbolt in there if he's looking at the Steam Surger, but yeah, I think it's just his hand's getting heavy too.
Yeah.
He has to pay heed to the fact that he will need to just access all the cards at some point.
Okay.
And MrYagut's got a lot of life to toy with here as well. I mean, the fact that he's got Feral Rage and that he's got Swipe means that he's free to just spend and clear this off and then move forward. And at this, MrYagut's hand is looking so good if he draws an Auctioneer.
Yes. Auctioneer is the activator for every card in his hand. Even still, Yagut would be able to draw an additional card off of excess mana with the Wild Growth next turn and hopefully find some resources to commit to the board. But that's if he gets them. Icicles is getting quite a bit of damage together.
This Medivh's gonna get stuffed if he goes for that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I like Yagut's Gluttonous Ooze tech. Plays well against, obviously, aggressive decks with early game weapons. And also just really messes up Medivh.
Icicle's not going for Medivh here is, it's an interesting deviation to me. You know, I think a lot of players would have been tempted to simply go for that. But the way his hand's panning out, Firelands Portal, Flame Geyser, Primordial Glyph, these can all provide him with a significant value to keep fighting for board and land Medivh on a turn where it's not necessarily going to get checked. The turn he plays it. You know, maybe he's got information about MrYagut having Gluttonous Ooze in his deck, and as a result wants to again find a turn where he can punish with that 7-7 the turn he goes into that. So I really like the deviation here for Icicles to just, be patient, not just slam the Medivh because he has an opportunity to, and trying to find an awkward position for MryaGut to have to fight. Is Yagut going to cast this Jade Idol, or does he feel like he needs to hold on to this to have that inevitability if the game comes to that point?
He's going to hold. I believe he played the first one already, so this is his last chance to infinite Jade Golems. And if you're playing against a mage deck, which can go very long, I think you're going to need that.
And this is also the turn that Icicles needed, was MryaGut to not get development in play. And this was part of his setup. Now he has the potential for just clear this out, see one more dead turn, get Medivh online. That is a massive swing that you're looking at in the coming turns.
Free Frostbolt's looking pretty good.
Counterspell is also going to operate.
Counterspell.
It operates effectively if MryaGut isn't holding Innervates, but I think this is some oversight from Icicles. What could MryaGut really be holding on to at this point?
Yeah, he obviously doesn't have pressure in hand.
So he's going to save the Counterspell, so he's waiting for a critical moment on that Counterspell instead. He wants to see MryaGut expend resources and then land that in a spot where maybe a critical swipe or Feral Rage is going to be a big breaker there.
Well, Drake is something to play for Yagut.
Yeah, not serving its main purpose, which is clearing out lots of minions, but it's still a 4/8 body.
And you're likely not going to be able to serve that purpose against this mage deck. This far into the game, the Drake's not going to do much with its battle cry.
Just baby Ancient Orb.
Yeah. Can't uproot this guy, though. Strictly worse.
No 8/4s. There's no 8/4 Primordial Drake.
No. Potentially Midnight Drake, but I don't think we're going to be seeing any of that.
It simply looks like a value turn. Oh, he's going to get... So the Medivh, I mean, it's not challenged on board. He gets the Counterspell online. He's protecting the Medivh with that Counterspell. He's saying one spell isn't going to be enough. Is MryaGut going to sniff that out? He's got to worry about Mirror Entity. He's got to worry about, just it being a generic secret.
Yeah. Potion of Polymorph, Gluttonous Ooze tests for.
That's the big one right there.
Wow.
And he knows it's not Mirror Entity now, so he's free to play the Eye of Blackpaw. I would almost guarantee that MryaGut is fearing a board sweep in this spot.
Yeah.
But if this was Icicle set up for attack and he doesn't have any threats left after this, MryaGut has a ton of inevitability on his side. So big board sweep isn't even going to clear the board at this point. It's just going to put a lot of damage on his minions so that Icicles can keep fighting back. But he shut down the value from Medivh at this point. The 7/7 completely checked. He's not under pressure of anything. This is exactly the spot that MryaGut wants to be in.
Yagut shut down the Counterspell with his Innervate. Icicles is left in a really poor position.
He's got tools to buy time, but...
He's got Pyroblast in deck.
Time is very much on MryaGut's side.
Yes, it always is. Natural armor gain with the hero power. Fail Rage in hand. It's a lot to get through with your Icicles.
I don't know, Cora.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine a world where Icicles can buy enough time and put together enough damage to win. And I'm not seeing it. Even if you have double Pyroblast. I just don't know. Tar Lord.
It's not about. That's a pretty good one to get.
It's a 5/7 on your opponent's turn.
4/7.
4/7.
Yep.
Yes, the Tar Lord is a 5/11. Or the... What, a Tar Lurker? Is this the Lurker? This is the Lurker.
It's very, very rare that just
God, you never see this one.
It's very rare. The 4-mana 2/3 is a big draw, but...
That's a big draw.
It's cranking out 6/6s, beefing up Aya at this point.
I mean, Yagut's still got to cut down the Medivh. 7/7 body's a threat.
I mean, the plan from Icicles to simply start pushing for damage, I think, is actually his one way to win this game as well. You know, he does have a freeze effect in hand. If the Medivh lives, you're looking at 14 more damage that's coming from that Medivh.
Thing is, he doesn't have any damage follow-up in hand. He's got a lot of staying power with Blizzard and second Ice Block. Gotta kill Yagut somehow.
Well, Medivh's not dying this turn.
Oh, that's 7 more to face.
It's another round of attacks.
Icicles is gonna be dead pretty soon.
I mean, it's something. I mean, the freeze effect here allows the Flame Elemental and the Arcanologist to actually get some damage in if that's going to be the case. I imagine that the Flame Elemental, he's got to consider holding it sometimes due to elemental stuff, but when you don't have them in your hand, he has to evaluate, is the draw next turn on a big elemental effect critical to closing?
Well, if you play Flame Elemental this turn and you top deck second Blaze Caller, for instance, there's 5 damage that's active immediately.
Right.
Do you need to maybe just get a little bit lucky at this point? Yeah, I think so. Arcanologist nets another Ice Barrier if Icicles is playing 2.
At this point, he's just going through every option in his deck that is a significant draw. He's trying to calculate the percentage of which one is most likely and then play to that game plan. And I can tell you right now, that game plan is simply damage.
He's going to hold on to the Flame Elemental. I understand this, but you also have the Tar Creeper in hand as a second elemental. I guess Hero Power isn't really any different if you use it again next turn.
Primordial Drake puts something in the way, though. That's really what Yagut needed right now. That Medivh getting an extra 7 damage could have put Mr. Yagut in a bit of trouble here.
That was a big draw for Yagut. Flame Geyser is not what Icicles wanted to see.
So it's back to the drawing board now. How does he actually get pressure rolling in this game? And I think the second Primordial Drake has shut that off.
Icicles was on the direct damage plan. Does he have to deviate here just to...
He was on the draw Pyroblast plan,
yeah.
for sure.
Big time. I mean, you can Geyser the 6-2, Hero Power the 5-1, but then you can't kill the Primordial Drake. Maybe Yagut's forced to throw the 7-attack Golem into the Medivh.
If Icicles had that 1-2 down last turn,
yeah,
Mr. Yagut would be 1 point of life higher.
It would be at 19, but Icicles would be able to cleanly get through that Drake and kill off 2 of the Golems.
Killing off an additional threat is really the big one.
Well, Creeper's gonna soak up 1 attack at least.
Fresh draw coming up.
How about a Gadgetzin?
I think anything's good right now.
That's really good.
Everything looks great. I mean, he doesn't have any bad draws left.
He's got both Innervates down. Now that was the second Wild Growth. He's used both Jade Blossoms. Yeah.
Looks great to me.
Get to go face for 7? Yeah, that's pretty good.
Looks like me like he's going to face for 11. Use that hero power. He's not gonna though. He's gonna play it safe.
It's like 7 is good enough right now.
The thing about it is this is honestly a very smart play from Mr. Yagut. The one way that Icicles wins is a chain of burn spells. If every single life is that precious, this just makes it that much harder for Icicles to win.
And Yagut is flexing with an additional 8 health worth of armor if he wants it from the Feral Rage. Well, kills the Golem.
Mr. Yagut's been awfully patient with this Jade Idol, and I'm curious if he needs that backup plan. Again, his deck just has so much value in it. But if he just chokes out all of Icicle's resources, that is the easy way.
I'm trying to think if.
But imagine if he just made an 8/8.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that Yagut can pick up this turn that wouldn't develop on board. Nothing's coming to mind, but if there is something and he does pick it up, then maybe you feel forced to play Jade Idol. Oh, that's... Yeah, maybe you feel pressured now.
In the parity situation, Mr. Yagut wins every single time from this spot.
that's just the nature of J Druid. If you're going late and you're even, I win.
Did you ever pyroblast the dark?
I don't even want it. Don't even say it. Don't say it, Nathan. It's too painful to hear.
Icicles has really lacked card draw this game.
Man.
The ATS getting blown up by that Gluttonous Ooze was such a major factor.
It was just the biggest disruption that could have possibly happened there. Like, maybe you pyro face if you have second pyro in deck and you just hope that Yagut doesn't have any way to gain health. You've seen both Earths and Scales.
And what could that card be in hand, though? Like, honestly, at this point, it's reasonable, I think, for Icicles to pin it down to quite literally Feral Rage and Innervate.
Yeah. Everything
else would have been played in Yagut's deck at this point.
Any minions would have hit board.
Any spells would have been used.
Yeah, I think this is Icicles only out. Pyro, hope you draw second Pyro and hope that Yagut can't heal.
Uh-oh.
Ooh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. This is, I think, gonna be it.
That's a lot of draws.
That's a lot of armor.
He picks up a Jade Idol. I think this game was pretty much done as it was, but we're going to speed that up a little bit. Hey,
throw an 8-8 and a 9-9 on board as well.
2 more. Just very few cards left in Yagut's deck.
Putting Icicles on 2-turn clock. Yeah, there's 3.
If Icicles is going to win, that's got to go face.
As Yagut's popping block this turn, Icicles puts up his own ice block. It's 1 more turn. So Icicles can put Yagut down to just 9 health and 4 armor. Yagut can heal back up to 14 with a hero power. And there's no one draw in Icicles deck that deals 14.
Be another ice block, Babbling Book, Kabbalist Tome, pick up burn spells, launch him.
Yeah.
He needs to pick up like Fireball, Frostbolt from a Kabbalist Tome or something. So there is a sequence here that wins for Icicles. It's just, it is incredibly small. But you gotta play to your outs.
You absolutely do.
And Mr. Yagut doesn't have to do anything.
No. No, he does not. He's gonna decide to. Wants to just ensure that these valets have no chance of going face. And you do that by throwing a lot of damage into him.
It's gonna need a miracle. If Icicles is gonna take game 2, no miracle will be had.
They don't call this Miracle Mage.
That's a tied series for Mr. Yagut. Casual 30+ power on the board to 0.
Yeah. You know. Ice block. The only thing that could give Icicles 1 more turn here.
Shuffle in.
Fatigue damage? Nah, I don't like that. I scoff at your fatigue damage.
Oh, he does take 1.
Yeah. Still goes back up to 13, though. So, you're feeling pretty good.
Kabbalist Tome?
Pebbling Book? Third ice block?
No dice.
Going out in style.
No, his own blaze color betrays him.
Just think of how different that game could have been if Atiash was able to actually get some value. Could have put a lot of pressure on Yagut, and maybe it would have been very different. But in this case, Yagut's going to tie up a series 1-1, and his Jade Druid will have to be up against whatever Icicles thinks is the best counter for that deck.
And honestly, the Gluttonous Ooze is probably the MVP of the game there.
Yep.
For Mr. Yagut. That one tech choice shut off a lot of the push that Icicles could have had. He's very patient. I think he set up the Medivh in about the best way that he could, and it's a perfect counter with that Gluttonous Ooze. I think that matchup goes very differently if that tech choice just simply isn't in MrYagut's deck.
Well, you got to give a hand to Icicles. He's playing very well under pressure. I am not familiar with him as a player, but certainly so far I'm impressed. He's shown a lot of patience.
Yeah, patience is definitely a
virtue.
I wasn't going to go with the fortune cookie, but it's an important thing to have. You have to know like when to slow down the game, like when your turning point is. And that's experience that these players have to build if they're going to recognize those things. If you rely purely on your intuition, you can find yourself not crafting the right game plan for it. But as we move into game 3, that's looking like an elemental shaman.
Yagut needs to teach me how to curve out his Jade Druid.
It's baits and growths.
Because I'm doing something wrong.
Baits and growths.
Growths and blossoms.
Muzzy knows it best. But MrYagut, unless he has information about what Icicle's deck is here, you could potentially see him hang on to Jade Idol or Wrath in this spot. He's actually just going to forekeep this. The fact that Icicles isn't playing an aggressive deck means that Wrath is largely, dead for quite a while. But the game plan for MrYagut is very much set in stone at this point. It is start ramping up the mana and draw your very powerful cards. For Icicles, because he's playing, once again, the Elemental package, you'll often see him take some weird turns with some of his cheaper Elemental cards. He'll want to set them up prior to one of his prerequisite effects. That way he can generate that value from it. That times means you don't play Firefly, you don't play that Flame Elemental, you play something off curve.
You hold resources because the prerequisite is so destructive if you don't plan out your turns very carefully.
It's a deck that can very quickly turn the corner with the tempo effects provided by Fire Elemental and by Blaze Caller. But it also gets online fairly quickly and fairly efficiently as well. The Jade package is still very strong, even though it's only the 2 Jade Claws, 2 Jade Lightning, and the Eye of Blackpaw. It's just a lot of stuff to do. And so Icicles, oftentimes, he can struggle when he's under a lot of pressure, but the scaling effect from MrYagut, it's not a matter of inevitability at this point. It's just how fast he can get that online. That's one of the big reasons he keeps Jade Idle in this spot, is simply is giving his future Jades +1/+1. So if he's able to hit a strong curve with Jades, I think that's where Icicles is going to struggle the most, just in the face of lots of big things in a row.
This is actually the most traditional Elemental Shaman build that I've seen over this weekend. And obviously traditional meaning over the last 3 weeks. Sort of breaking out in the Ungoro meta, but we've seen a lot of Control Shaman. We saw Frodan bringing a full Elemental Shaman yesterday with no Jade package. This is really sort of what we're more used to seeing. You've got your 5 Jade cards, you've got your Elementals, but it does struggle at a point with card draw. If you don't run double Mana Tide Totem, you don't have Azure Drake anymore, and you can really be starved for cards. And that's where the Elemental prerequisite can really come back to bite you.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that I've had trouble with, and I've heard a lot of players having trouble with as well, is just having the right curve of cards. And if your resources get checked, you're just left staring at some fairly dead cards in your hand that don't have a lot of synergy built into them. It's when it hits its maximum potential that the deck has that giant power spike. And that's really what you're playing for when you play this deck, is against a deck like Druid, it's very often in a comfortable spot because of the swings provided by Flame Elemental, by Blaze Caller. Those are minions that MrYagut's often going to struggle to deal with. So Icicles being able to attack with that big minion and have it attacked into means it's dealing that double damage. It wants to buy its value simply through the strength of its cards.
Question is, will Icicles have enough time to unlock that full strength? Because Yagut has had quite a good early ramp start.
A couple of his draws with the Feral Rages are quite dead at this point. But he does have Fandral coming up. Icicles is looking like that's going to get checked really easily.
Well, the Aya draw for Icicles is pretty good. If you're planning on Lightning on turn 5 into Aya on 6, Lightning lines up into Fandral very nicely. Aya puts a lot of pressure on board that the Druid really struggles to deal with.
Yeah, it's 2 different angles of attack now for Icicles. If he's free to simply develop, he's got the Eye of Blackpaw. If he has to fight for board, he's got Flame Elemental. An Innervate draw might be fairly significant, though. This might throw Icicles off for a turn. The fact that he can now Innervate and clear that off. But I'm curious if he wants to Wrath now and draw the extra card and just overkill, or if he wants a Hero Power, maybe he even just leaves it around. Says, you know what? Jade Lightning is something he's got to have if he wants to put this off. Maybe Flame Tongue Totem, but second Jade Claws won't kill it in that spot.
Yeah, I think if you just go ahead and do this here, you're playing around both Flame Tongue and Jade Lightning. It's just safer. and then maybe your opponent's forced to develop, and then you get the full value of Wrath on the following turn. Plus, you have 2 Feral Rages in hand. You'd like to get 8 armor and 4 damage at the same time if you could. This is just safer. Fandle's got a lot of value to unlock still.
And the second Hex drawn makes it a lot easier for Icicles to just pull the trigger on that one. You know, hexing early on will sometimes mean that MryaGut just plays a big minion, and it's troublesome for your game plan.
You're stuck.
Drawing the second one, though, a lot easier.
And if Thing from Below is in deck, then every hero power gets you closer to a 0 mana 5/5 taunt. Applies a lot of pressure. Okay.
It's going to wait around for a while.
Yeah, I don't think a YOLO Gadgetson is in MryaGut's plans.
Well, I mean, maybe it could be. Is he feeling that desperate? The fact that he's got 2 Feral Rages in hand, I mean, just look at his face.
His demeanor is...
It's like, how did this is the one that came up? Well, you do have 2 Feral Rages and 2 Earthen Scales. So those are meant to just act as purely defensive cards.
Oh, he's going to go for it.
This is MryaGut just simply feeling desperate in this spot. He has to have a big payoff, or Icicle's just going to very easily outscale him in this spot. So this is a bit of disruption, but there is a nice answer for Icicles. He's really happy to see this hit the board because this is also telling of MryaGut's hand.
Saying my hand is weak and there's nothing that I can do this turn. Yagut's got to draw Nourish. He has to draw his big Jades. And because he didn't hold on to Gadgetson now, Jade Idol or Wild Growth off the top, he doesn't have access to card draw. So yes, it's a little bit of disruption for Icicles. He's not going to have an Elemental played this turn, so Blaze Caller won't be active on 7. You can still just roll into Aya Blackpaw on 7 and feel pretty damn good about it.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow, that is the deadest draw in the deck.
If he had held.
I know. It's a risk you got to take.
Oh
my God.
8 mana. Cycle, hero power, go.
God, what are we playing? Old Priest?
New Druid.
New old Druid. There's a lot of threats in Yagut's deck. 2 Nourish, 1 more Gadgetson, Primordial Drakes, Jade Behemoth, Jade Spirit, Jade Idol.
I think Icicles even wins that battle still. I mean, he's got the super powerful elementals in addition to having the Aya Blackpaw. At this point, it is a snowball effect where MryaGut's not going to recover.
And in addition to the Aya this turn, Icicles picks up the Firefly. That means Blaze Caller is online next turn. Now the Aya pickup's nice, but Icicles' Jades are the same size.
Yeah, MryaGut fighting back a little bit, but this is where things start to become very troublesome. Icicles now is free to start pushing damage.
Oh,
and when that damage starts getting pushed, MryaGut's having to trade back into that damage. So all of Icicles' minions are going to start dealing that double damage effect I was talking about, where he's able to attack with a minion, MryaGut has to attack it back. That's where that deck buys its value from.
Icicles has a lot of options here. Hex into Aya was looking really nice, but you also could just devolve if you'd like to put down Fire Elemental afterwards. Yep.
Yeah, that's bad news.
That's pretty good for Icicles. Get full clear, Aya to face.
Hey, does he need to clear that?
You don't have to.
Sure, why not? Free pickup.
Yagut might have a swipe in hand, maybe.
(3-6) into 6-5 is not a very good feeling.
I don't know if that lines up very well. I mean, you can Feral Rage hero power. Try to line up your 3-6 into Aya at the very least. Man, oh man, Yagut's early draw was so strong, but he did not have the follow-up that he needed this game. Actually looking a lot similar to his last game. The deck he was up against was just a lot more forgiving of some missed development turns. Whew.
That's a big pickup.
It's pretty good.
That's a lot of damage.
How much damage are we looking at? See, Flame Tongue, running the Healing Totem, 5 damage from Blaze Caller, then Aya and Wrath to face, so 9.
Yeah, and a big board. A very big board. He could also simply just place the Flame Tongue trade over
Aya,
Behemoth, and then Blaze Caller the 4/4 afterwards.
Yeah.
He's got a wealth of options at this point. He's going to take the just pure choke every single potential from MRyagut plan.
There's nothing wrong with playing it a little bit safe. Yagut's got one card in hand, and you pretty much know it's not very good.
Honestly, this is just, I think it's just better. Like, MRyagut has 0 options for how to combat the board. He is dead.
No need to be aggressive when you're going to win anyway. Oh my god. That was an abysmal draw from Yagut, and Icicles is going to go up 2-1. His Shaman is going to be up against whatever Yagut thinks has the best chance. And you know what? If you'd come into that matchup, I would have probably said, yeah, I think the Shaman's slightly favored. It puts on a good amount of pressure early, but the Druid has so much ability to stave off early pressure now, build that health total back up, and then you have the inevitability factor. I think it would have been a lot closer, would have been my initial prediction.
To me, it just depends on when Icicles gets that big payoff turn. I think that his deck certainly has more threat potential in it where it's concerned. It takes MRyagut quite a bit of time to get online with that sort of stuff. So if he's getting value and he's getting tempo, that's where MRyagut pushes out. Now that was exacerbated by the fact that he did not have significant tools to fend himself off. The double Feral Rage was really the big bite to his game plan there. But you know, playing that Auctioneer as soon as he did, was that a necessary risk for him to take?
I think that's definitely the turn to look at. May have been a bit too risky, but Yagut's actually down to his last deck now, so he's forced to respond with this Paladin build, and it's looking like a control Paladin.
Yeah, I'm curious if this is like just mid-range Murlocs with the Stonehill Defender thrown in. I am a big fan of the way that deck scales outside, but after seeing some of the technology that the players have brought with the Steward of Darkshire plus the 2/1 Murloc packages.
They're doing some crazy things.
That deck's got a lot of game. Every step of the way, it feels like it has synergy, and it still has the top end with Curator, Drake, and Tyrion.
Yeah.
They've cut out Light Lord, I think, anyway, from that deck. I don't know where you really...
I don't think you fit it in if you're playing Bilefin, Tidehunter, and Murloc Tidecaller as well.
Exactly. I was talking with players on the floor, and they're like, he's got to have a 53-card deck. It just doesn't make any sense.
Chalky's brought 46 cards.
And in this matchup here, I think that MRyagut, the fact that his deck is that little bit slower actually gives him quite an edge in this matchup. Very much Icicles is fighting a strong value battle here. It's going to be tough for him to land one big minion and have that do the heavy lifting. MRyagut's got effective ways to answer with True Silver Champions, with Alor Peacekeepers, with loading up a minion on Spike Ridge Steed. He can shrink 2 significant minions down with Sunkeeper Tarim. This is going to be a dance of whether or not he can force removal from Icicles in an untimely manner. If Tyrion actually sticks to the board and isn't hexed, that's a nightmare for Icicles. And then not only that, but the hero power for MRyagut lines up a lot better versus Icicles if it comes to that significant of a value battle.
It does.
Everything goes to 1-for-1. The 1/1s just beat 0-2s. So Icicles very much has to find a way to turn the corner at the right spot and also fade a big equality clear. That is a lot to do in this matchup.
It's a lot to play around, and unfortunately, a lot of the time you're not in the position to be able to play around all of those cards at one time. I do think the Devolve is something to highlight here for Icicles. It operates almost as a third hex in some situations. If Yagut puts down something with a Spike Ridge Steed, you don't have hex. Well, Devolve takes away the stat buff and the 2/6 Death Rattle behind it. Also, it's a panic button against Tyrion.
Yeah, not a very good discovery for MRyagut here. You know, he's looking for the 2 big Paladin taunts that he can fetch from this with Sunkeeper Tarim and with Tyrion Forgering off those big taunts. You know, there's also Wickerflame Burn Bristlets in there, but he's not fighting against aggressive potential here. It's just strictly a value game.
Also, just Grime Street Protector.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. 7 mana, 6/6 taunt, give Divine Shield, get a little bit of value out of it. Every bit that you can is helpful.
Icicles does have the kind of hand, I think, that is fairly well equipped for this matchup, though. He's got Tar Creeper to put a lot of pressure on MRyagut to use True Silver Champion early.
Yeah.
He's got Servant of Kalamos to start buying that value. He's got Fire Elemental to start turning that board position around and threaten damage.
And then he still does have the Jade package to back it up. So there's a lot of minion generation for Icicles. A lot of pressure.
Yeah, MRyagut has a lot of responses, though. And the double True Silver. If there's no Stoneclaw out, that card is such a heavy hitter.
It's going to come down to who's going to miss a big turn first. Will Yagut not be able to respond, or will Icicles not be able to develop?
Which I think we're far off of both of those points right now.
Yeah,
so
we got a long game in for us.
It's a long phase that we're going through.
I have a feeling that these guys are holding up the round a little bit.
It's a pleasure to watch. I love it. I love the grindy battles.
They're fun. When you have all of these decisions to make and everything's not quite so straightforward. In the match that Noxious and I had previous to this, Terrence's opponent had a Shaku the Collector, which he then double cold-blooded and had Wind Speaker in hand because he got it off the Shaman. That game was over in about 4 minutes. So this is a little bit more interesting to watch.
Yeah, and the Spell Power Totem here actually playing a really big role for Icicles. The Cyclopean Horror getting +2 buff here, just effectively Ascension, but it's troublesome to where Icicles wants to start making progress and chipping away and buying that value. Instead here, he just has a nice clean kill onto the Cyclopean Horror and prevent it from actually making big board impact against him. So his turns are looking very nice as this game rolls out. And MRyagut, he's fairly reluctant to just simply give up his 1-3, but he needs to get True Silver online at some point.
The big kicker is you can't develop anything behind it this turn. Can't even hero power with the True Silver. So you're giving all of the development over to Icicles, but you going into this matchup know that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and looking at his hand, Spike Ridge Steed can certainly be a big liability if he finds a Hex or a Devolve against it, but that is certainly a concern he wants. The longer he waits to play that card, the more time Icicles has to find that answer. And at the same token, he's got Tyrion Lightlord Tyrion Fordring in
You just
hand.
miss Rag Lightlord so much.
so if he finds a Hex or Devolve onto a Spike Ridge Steed minion,
maybe Tyrion sticks around.
Exactly. So in this spot, he may actually just be going for Hydrologist and Hero Power, trying to get that Steed online immediately and put Icicles to the test. Do you have an answer to this right away?
Well, at the very least, Yagut's taking his time.
Getaway Kodo's very nice. That actually may prevent him from hero powering in some circumstances, but he's got to get going right now.
Does he get the hero power in?
Well, does he want a hero power too?
He does get it.
it
Maelstrom Portal would actually get away Kodo the Hydrologist, I believe.
Yeah, because they would both die at the same time. The spell power in that situation would have actually been a liability.
Yeah.
But the order for which Getaway Kodo will retrieve a minion, or redemption for that matter, is and the order they entered the board in the case they die simultaneously.
Well, if the defender gets bounced back to Yagut's hand, then that's another chance at second copy of Tyrion or Sunkeeper Tarim.
Yeah, and Icicles currently he doesn't have information of this secret. He can make an assumption there's only 5 that are available right now. But if he's clever enough to, say, Fire Elemental the Silver Hand in that spot.
It's tough to say. Fire Elemental onto the defender and then a clean trade into the recruit is really tempting. Is he going to play around the secret?
Wow.
He is.
That's
really smart from Icicles.
It's a very heads-up play. In very rare situations does he ever get punished by this. There's just not any significant secret that really does anything, and the power on board for MRyagut means very little. So, having the foresight just go, hey, you know what? Shut off the Getaway Kodo. And that's exactly what I was talking about. Does MRyagut even want to hero power on that turn? Maybe that value is just insignificant and doesn't matter as well.
Yeah, maybe. Does keeping defender alive really matter all that much? Even another copy of Hydrologist could have given you, Repentance to shut down a larger health minion, help you get a clean trade. It's worth thinking about.
No player's still able to really seize an advantage, though. It's there's answers on both sides, and MRyagut going to a quality consecration. This feels very early to me, but something to think about is he didn't see Maelstrom Portal. This would be a terrible Volcano turn. It's not a good Lightning Storm turn. Icicles is set up to either play another Fire Elemental or to play like Servant to Kalamos in this turn. This takes away a lot of the counterplay options for Icicles in this spot.
That's a good point. And you do have second copies of Equality and Consecration in your deck, so you're not sacrificing your only board clear, and likely you're going to need them again, because that was a relatively small board to actually pull the trigger on those 2 resources to clear off. But also, Yagut just needs to find some footing in this game. He needs to attempt to take control. This is his best way to do it.
Yeah, and you notice Icicles, he just takes the Alakir here. Honestly, it's not even that good of a card, but it's the most valuable of those 3. And in these kinds of fights, all you're looking for is your cards to simply provide a lot of value. So every single option he takes is he's going to be looking towards that direction. How do I just get the most out of my cards?
Fear not, Admirable. Rag Lightlord is here to save the day. Or Rag Fordring, I guess, as we could call him.
Lightlord and Ragnaros Fordring, yeah.
It's like if they got married and started a family, took each other's last names.
You'd have Uther.
Yep. How cute. Hearthstone fanfiction.
I think it's about time to giddy up on these true silvers.
Yeah, they've just been hanging out, doing not a lot up to this point. You could drop the Murloc behind it, try to save your Hydrologist.
He wants the steed.
Giddy up.
You know, it's a fairly poor Hex target at the moment, too. There's not really any progress that Icicles to be making. They're fairly small-sized in terms of the power that's available to them, and this is the stage where Icicles, you know, getting to his heavier hitting cards, and so when he finds access for those, it's not really a big deal that he has to run over a Stegodon or a 3/3 or anything like that. So MRyagut, I think, is trying to mitigate the potential of those styles of cards rather than you know, test for if the big effect is there and then follow up with a giant threat. Hope Icicles doesn't have an answer. So, you know, when does this battle end for?
When does somebody actually take an advantageous position? I mean, we saw a 45-minute Elemental Shaman Mirror in Tespa just a couple weeks back. It was a doozy of a game.
There's too much value for Icicles to pass up. I mean, he delivers a lot of effective damage to that devolve. And it's something that you rarely have. And Stone Sentinel.
That's a nice one.
Just big stuff.
2 pretty high value minions off of the Servant of Kalamos.
And now that MRyagut's on 8, you know, this is typically the time where he wants to start getting big threats online, but he is not in a position to start any aggressive pushes. The Tyrion, you know, maybe he's looking at that going, I just saw a devolve. Like, this has got to be the turn for it. But Hex is going to be on his mind every single turn. He's thinking about Tyrion.
Yeah, you haven't tested for Hex yet. And one of your Stonehill defenders gone, and it got you a Cyclopean Horror. You've only got 1 defender left, which potentially could net you another Tyrion. But you don't want to just give away this first one to the best counter.
Well, again, the longer you wait, the more likely it is that it's there. And I don't really see MRyagut forcing a Hex anytime soon.
No.
So if that's the case,
you're not pulling the trigger on Lightlord this turn.
Well, it's looking like it would pay off if he did. You know, Icicles doesn't have a super efficient answer to it at the moment. So I think MRyagut's really considering a Tyrion right now. Just wants the value instead.
Finally getting a true silver online. Maybe gives him more options on the following turn.
Yeah, the other problem with the Tyrion here is even if it does get checked, he does have 2 true silvers behind it.
Yeah.
So those are just 2
you
good
need
cards
to get your weapon swings in at some point.
Exactly. So.
Ooh.
Oh my.
That's a lot of elemental action.
Oh my. Even the Alec here is looking fairly brutal here. The Divine Shield can run over the Galaka Crawler. Pushes 3 damage, kills the Silver Hand. He's got a 3/5 versus a true Silver Champion, and the 3/5 has Taunt and Wind Fury.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. It's really tempting to hold on to Alec here when you've got Flame Tongue in hand. I can't blame him for
it's a lot
making
of
this
damage.
play.
It is a lot of burst damage.
Yes, it is. And you've still got Jade Lightning in hand too, so there's a bit of burn potential from Icicles.
So the first unchecked threat looks like it's arrived for Icicles at this point. The Blazecaller now threatening to start delivering damage, but MRyagut, I don't think necessarily needs to fight super hard against that this turn. He's just going to play Ragnaros Lightlord and say, yeah, hit me if you want. 8-8 versus 6-6.
My guy wins. He's bigger. And this is definitely the first threat that actually checks for Hex in Icicle's hand. So if Yagut doesn't see Hex, then I think Tyrion is a safe bet.
And slowly but surely, MRyagut is losing control of this game. His resources are starting to dwindle, and Icicles is building just a bigger and stronger hand turn after turn. The resources have just not lined up that well. He had no opportunity for True Silvers to pull anything significant. This Ragnaros will die in a number of various ways for Icicles this point. And he's still got so much in hand.
I mean, this is a fantastic showing for the Elemental Shaman. It's done everything that it's wanted to do up until this point, and it's made it look easy. Not all the games are this easy for Elemental Shaman.
Just stuff. Lots of stuff.
You even get to play down Flame Elemental as well. Activate Sentinel for next turn if you want it. Look at all this damage.
I am curious if there's any merit for Icicles to actually isolate the Flame Elemental on the far left with caution to Stampeding Kodo in this spot. Now, the Kodo, it makes Flame Tongue just die, but how much of an impact is that really? Just something to think about.
It's a good point. Positioning matters. We don't run into a lot of situations in Hearthstone anymore where positioning is key. And I certainly don't think it's going to make that much of a difference in this game, but you gotta give a nod to Kodo.
Losing a 1-2 instead of losing the Flame Tongue Totem can be a big deal.
Then Alakir hits for 10 instead of 6.
And that early board clear that MRyagut expend, did it hurt? And was that the turn he needed to do that?
It's very possible.
That damage would have quickly piled up. There's not really much doubt about that.
Well, this makes sense too. Doesn't make much of a difference.
Does take 0 damage in this iteration. And
yeah.
Bloodlust drawn
Ooh.
for Icicles. So the glimpse at the finishing blow, that's there. Now, every single time he has a big board and it's unchecked, MRyagut is under massive threat. I mean, this is a very easy Stone Sentinel turn if I'm in Icicle spot.
Stone Sentinel hero power, go as wide as possible. You saw Quality Consecrate. You know it's very unlikely that Yagut has a second full board clear. And if you can just set up one solid turn for Bloodlust, you could 30 to death him.
Yeah, and the Jade Lightning just to back that up as well.
This is reasonable too.
Well, this is a very interesting approach to it as well. I mean, this does play a lot stronger versus the True Silver Champion, and it doesn't really risk anything for him. I mean, he doesn't have an Elemental played for the Stone Sentinel following turn, so he's looking to go into Alakir, Alakir surviving the board, and then the Bloodlust afterwards. If the Alakir gets checked in some significant capacity, his Stone Sentinel will follow up.
Yeah.
So this is a very value-oriented way to play this game, but at the same time, he's still getting the same amount of threat potential alongside Bloodlust. He has 5 minions on board, and only one of them is able to die from his perspective.
Put your faith in the light.
Well, Tyrion's going to force a couple of trades.
Unless.
But that's pretty much the last threat for Yagut. He's
two-
getting some early Murlocs, but it's not enough to put together.
Huge draws available for Icicles, and Hex was it, but that's not Hex. So still fight going on, but again, MRyagut, now he's starting to draw all those early game cards that he wanted on turns 1, 2, and 3. He's picking up as the game goes in the later stages where you need your big payoffs.
How does Icicles want to clear this Tyrion most efficiently? It's going to give a 1/1 buff to a minion on board.
It's looking good to me.
Still neat to face. I don't know.
There's no defensive tools in MRyagut's hand either.
Is there anything in his deck that gets him out of this?
He's looking at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He's looking at 19 damage next turn. So Lay on Hands will actually keep him alive for another turn, but he's got to find something these next draws, or he's going to die very quick.
Well, Bloodlust comes down. Alakir does 6, 10.
Oh, Alakir's dead this turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So through Alakir, then you have 3 on board.
19.
Yeah.
I think.
Natural copy of Lay on Hands. That's really interesting.
there's one piece of the puzzle. Second piece is missing, though. And he's still going to have to face down a Jade.
Got to kill Aya and the golem that comes with it. And Yagut just can't do a million things at once, unfortunately.
Seven plus 9, so 16 damage. He'd have 5 more with the Blaze Caller on the following turn. So still not quite there with just pure damage from hand. But
you could Sentinel this turn and set up for a bigger Bloodlust, or you could just rip the Bloodlust and hope that a minion sticks around. It's very likely that one of them will.
That's really the big question for me too. Is oftentimes Bloodlust doesn't have to be a finishing blow. It can just be a significant blow that sets up your future plays. And so in this spot, Icicles, he needs to weigh the merit of just simply getting 9 damage from a card where you have to have board presence to get any damage.
It's a 5-mana Pyroblast.
He is seeing MrYagut draw 3 cards from Lay on Hands though, and now he's got another draw coming up. So suddenly a quality board clear is something now back on Icicles' mind. If he didn't see that Lay on Hands, this would have been easy turns for him. So he's going to test for it. He says, I have an Eye of Blackpaw to back this up. Like, what could really go wrong here? He has to have a board clear right now.
Consecration's the big draw.
That'll do it.
He does not get it.
There's no way for Yagut to clear this board position, and so he's going to dig deep and find the best one he can, but Icicles, 3 games to 1 is going to take this set versus MrYagut.
That's a big showing for Icicles. MrYagut is no pushover. Complexity has been doing very well lately. He's a valued member of that team. And for a relative unknown like Icicles to make a deep run in this tournament against competitors like MrYagut, it's a big reputation builder.
I definitely have to say I think MrYagut suffered a bit from the way the draws panned out in this one. Again, he's drawn all of his early cards late. And in the Druid game, he drew both Feral Rages early on in a matchup where they are not necessary to the game plan whatsoever. So things did go, awry for MrYagut in those situations, but Icicles every step of the way was very patient, was very careful.
Took in all of his options and executed the turns very consistently.
Yeah, this is what MrYagut wanted his turn 5 to look like.
Yeah.
Not his turn 36 or wherever
we're at. That's going to be game and match for Icicles.
Ooh.
Relief.
Servant of Calamos
on his face.
Coming up big in this one too, providing 2 significant threats. So both with Alec here forcing action, delivering damage, fighting for board, and then the Stone Sentinel just setting up way too much for MrYagut to be able to answer. Servant of Calamos was, I think, a big catalyst to this game plan. Again, this is a long value battle that we fought, but for me, I have to look at MrYagut's turn when he played the equality early on. I think it was a strong tempo play. I think he had a great opportunity to seize the position afterwards, but the follow-up from Icicles was too much. To me, it's how much damage could he even afford to take at that point? If he takes too much early on, he's never going to get a foothold.
I think the Jade package also looked very strong for Icicles in that game. We did see Frodan yesterday removing Jades entirely and going full elemental pressure with his Shaman build, but the Jades provided that additional pressure, and Sticky Aya was, of course, just as annoying as ever. So very nice play from Icicles, very patient. Lineup seemed very strong, and he is still fighting his way through this tournament.
Yeah, now it's sitting at oh, whoa, hey, where did you come from?
Hey,
PJ.
guys. What's up? Man, Icicles is a stone-cold killer.
He's very patient. That was good to see.
He froze MrYagut's Paladin deck in its tracks.
More people get killed from falling Icicles every year than, like, shark attacks.
Is that true?
Not many people die from shark attacks every year.
I think more people die from coconuts, too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that allergy related? Or?
I very well may have made it up.
But that was the last.
You'll never know.
That was the last round 8 match, as you guys could probably have assumed,
Yes.
considering how long that one went on. It was only 3-0, but that's the last round 8 match. You'll never believe who's the only 8-0 player left.
Dog.
It is.
Mr. Lego.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Dog is now the last remaining undefeated player, so he has guaranteed himself a spot in the top 16 with that performance. So we'll be seeing a lot more Dog as the tournament progresses. We also had the Tempo Storm Civil War.
How'd it go?
So to speak. Raynad actually defeated Trump 3-0 in his match. So Raynad moves to 7-1. He's pretty much assured a spot in the top 16, even if he loses in his last round. And just saying, defeated Eloise. So Just Saying and Raynan, 2 players go to 7-1. Shoop also 7-1 now after round 8.
So proud.
Who else? Terrence M, now 7-1.
Yep.
Very
Second
nice.
runner-up at last year's DreamHack.
Yep.
Now in the running for to take that up 1 notch. There's only 1 spot
Yeah.
he could go, but it's a big step.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between second and first.
Yes.
He's looking for first.
6-2s. Astrogation is sort of at the top of the 6-2 mark with some of the best tiebreakers in. So he's in a win-and-in situation. Chalky as well. He's got some good tiebreakers. And MRyagut, his tiebreakers are pretty good, I think. He's at 6-2, so he could be in a win-and-in situation at 6-2.
We
But
could
yeah,
get a top 16 with Tempo Storm, Chalky, Terrence M.
yeah,
Whew,
It's like a reunion.
that's a good one.
it is.
I'm liking it. This DreamHack's been shaping up very
It's
nicely.
like exactly the same. It's going to be a Chalky versus Terrence M finals
Oh,
again.
God. DreamHack
Terrence
Austin
Revenge.
2016.
Also, J. Billy B,
Billy.
6-2.
Yes.
What a guy.
Still going on.
J. Billy B is by far the nicest person
So nice.
that I have just ever met, period. Like,
Yeah.
not in Hearthstone, not in game, just ever. J. Billy B is the nicest person of all time.
And he can make it into the top 16 with a win
So
in the
he's
next
also
round.
good at Hearthstone.
He's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Good guy to have as a friend.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of that that elemental shaman?
It's certainly a very grindy value deck. If you're not under pressure, you don't have to expend any tools. And that deck certainly has ways to generate that extra value via tempo as well. When you start to threaten damage, your opponent needs to respond. And if you can't do that, it's a lot of damage those minions start dealing.
Yeah.
It was a grindy game, and we've seen a lot of different shaman builds emerging, a lot of control shaman, and then, of course, Frodan's pure elemental build, which sort of baffled us yesterday, but it did pull off a win for him. This is the traditional elemental shaman with the Jade package that I think I've discounted a lot because it just hasn't had strong showings without additional card draw. It looked really good here, however.
I just hate Shaman. Sick of that.
But they don't play
Totem
Totem
enough.
Golem,
Totem Golem's
Nathan.
gone. Let's put it to rest. Give him a break.
Every
Stop
time
playing
we had to
Shaman.
cast Jade Shaman at Tespa, oh my God, you could just see it in his eyes. He did not want to be there.
The anger, the anger. All right, well, round 8 is in the books, and it's almost time to get underway with round 9. We're going to give the players a little chance to have a break and get the pairing set up as we move forward with the final round of Swiss. We're going to go to a break, but don't go anywhere, guys. More DreamHack Austin Grand Prix right after this.